A very warm welcome to Rachel Binx.
Cool. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me at XOXO, which is how I've chosen to pronounce the name of this conference. It's using the Basque X. I tried to make this joke to Andy on Twitter last year. He was not having it. He sort of nicely corrected, like, it's XOXO, but viva la XOXO. Okay. So hi, I'm Rachel Binx, and some of you know me and a lot of you don't, and so I was trying to think of how to introduce myself, and kind of like most people, I guess what I default to is kind of my day job, which is data visualization. Except it's not really a day job because I've been freelancing for the past 2 years, right? So this sort of pays the bills, and then what you might actually know me from are these two companies, these sort of recreational e-commerce called Meshu and Gifpop. And just to sort of go through them real quick. So Meshu is this company for turning places into custom jewelry. And so the site is basically you enter in, see these places that are important to you, and then that gets turned into something either laser cut or 3D printed. And this sort of started off as kind of this love letter to kind of rapid manufacturing and these services online that allow you to take kind of random designs and turn them into these beautiful objects. And both of these are actually with Xia Huang, and we're both from a sort of data visualization background. And we sort of thought of it originally as a data visualization project. And you get these kind of nice shapes, and these are my Foursquare check-ins from different cities. We sort of built in like a Foursquare integration, which is hilariously a lot of the launch articles were like, ugh, who wants Foursquare jewelry? We're like, no, it's really cool, really. But and it's funny because what sort of this turns into is this more, these sort of beautiful poems that come out of where these places are actually important to people. And this one says, all the places that I've lived all over the world, the cities I've loved, and the friends I've left behind. This is someone's entire life story in these couple of points that's now this shape, that's now this piece of jewelry that she can wear. The other one is called Gifpop, and that is lenticular printing of animated GIFs. And this is sort of us kind of celebrating GIF culture and how much we love the internet. But I'll just let you enjoy this for a minute. I mean, they loop, guys. Come on, we've seen it before. And so half of it is this sort of where you can make your own card, and then half of Gifpop is us being able to work with GIF artists. And there's a lot of really amazing work being done in the GIF medium these days. And so it was a really wonderful thing for us that we got to get in touch with these people and to start making prints of their work. And for some of these people, this is kind of this is their nights and weekends fun thing that they do, is this GIF art. And this was the first time for some of them that they had been able to make money off of the thing that they're actually known for. It's also just been really wonderful to see the way that people are using this as sort of a way to create their own artwork. And we've seen artists kind of make these really beautiful expressions through the lenticular medium. Sean, I like to say that when you give to the internet gives back. And sort of both of these projects are us trying to create kind of platforms for people that they can take their own data and things that are meaningful to them and sort of walk away with it in something physical and something fun. So anyway, so that's sort of the work that I do, and sort of in general, I just hang out on the internet. Like most of you, it's where I spend most of my time and most of my socializing, and it's where I build things for, and it's kind of my entire life. And I was trying to think of sort of how to give you a life story, kind of where I came from and how I sort of ended up with this being true. And if we were maybe at a tech year conference, this is where I would put up a photo of me at age 3 and tell you how I learned how to program at age 3, and I've been making things since then, and code is life, and blah, blah, blah. Except that it's not true, right? Because I only learned how to code 5 years ago, and I've been sort of making up for lost time, but like this isn't sort of the thread that's been going through my whole life. And something that's closer to that, I guess, would be kind of entrepreneurship or selling things. This is a bracelet that I made when I was 6, and I used to table at craft fairs when I was in elementary school with my mom, and we would make jewelry, and then I would sell it. And being 6 and 7 and 8, you don't really have anything to buy, so I just kind of took the money and put it in a little jar, and then at some point in my adolescence was like, oh boy, I have money. Can go to the mall and buy 2 whole t-shirts or something. But I sort of was doing projects like this throughout my childhood and adolescence, and had a stamped card business at some point. And when I was 17 or 18, I came up with these collaged card designs, and then marched down to Kinko's and got them printed up, and then had these nice cards that I could then sell. And the summer between high school and college for me wound up being particularly long based on how the schedules of them were apart, and I had about 5 months to just kind of kill time in Albuquerque, where I'm from. And so I wound up meeting these 2 people that were opening a store, and we sort of collaborated on this, and I wound up providing about half of the merchandise in their store. And so every Friday I would go down there and I would watch the store and try to sell to people, and probably made about $150 that month or that summer. You don't really sell that much. On some level, this is sort of like looking at baby photos of myself. With these photos, I've never shown these publicly before. Funny story, this one, the record bowl was me trying to do a photo shoot in my parents' living room, and so I got a poster and turned it around and created the backdrop, and then I had like a little lamp with a 100-watt light bulb in my point and shoot, and was like, kind of like trying to get this ideal shot. And hilariously enough, I dropped the lamp on my leg and gave myself a huge burn that took several years for that to fade. So, had a nice little reminder of the time that I tried to do a photo shoot. And those earrings up there, I wound up, I don't know, I kind of wanted to see how real shops work, right? So I had this little board thing, kind of, that I put a bunch of them on there, and then I went actually to stores in Albuquerque and tried to convince them that they should be buying these earrings from me and that I'm, this hip local artist, up and coming something. I think made maybe $25 off of, one store that kind of took pity on me, I think. And that was a good lesson for me, in that earnestness is not enough. Right, that you have to kind of follow through, and you have to know the industry that you're working in, and the polish matters, and appearance matters. And that's why the single greatest expense that I've ever spent on these companies would be the photo shoot for Meshu before we launched. And it was very important to me that we did this right. And we have 2 models, a photographer, an assistant, a makeup artist, and a hair artist. And they were all working very cheaply, but it still wound up costing between $3,000 and $4,000. But that was a lesson learned. And I think maybe it's maybe kind of good to get kicked around when you're first starting off in the creative field. This is I guess an ex-friend of mine who hired me to do some headshots, and he was a magician and had this show, and so wanted some photos taken. And so, we met up, and I took these photos and, edited them and sent them to him for his approval or whatever. I'm sure you've heard the story before, but basically he took the files, cropped off the watermark, and then put it up on his site and never talked to me again. And it's weird, to lose a friend over something that you're trying to ask for maybe $40 or $50 for a couple hours of your time. But that stuff happens. And I wish that I could say that this is the only time it's happened, but I've built entire websites where, it's sort of on a friend agreement, and you hand it over, and then they stop talking to you. And so when Mike Montiero started talking about design as a job and fuck you, pay me, for me this wasn't a cute little use of profanity online. This was something real and something experienced. And it's those sort of times that you've been, kind of taken advantage of, right, that sort of harden you. And then you start to say, hey, I'm actually worth money. And when I was 19 doing an $8.25 data entry job for the summer, I was trying to learn web design at the same time, and my coworkers somehow told my boss this, and they didn't like the website, and they somehow kind of insinuated that I hated the website and that I said I could do better, even though I had no idea, the difference between a div and a span at that point. But my boss sort of came over and was like, "Oh yeah, fine, fine, redesign it. Yeah, let's see what you got." And so I did, but also went over and said, well, if I'm going to be doing web design, I'm going to need a raise. I'm going to need a raise to a whole $25 an hour, which when you're 19, it sounds like you're asking for $1 billion. But then when someone takes your highball offer without batting an eye, you learn something about your industry and how to value yourself. Fast forward a couple of years, and sort of the one real job that I've held down in my life, not held down, but that I've taken in my life, would be at Stamen, which is a data visualization and mapping studio in San Francisco. And yeah, I know you're out there. So they sort of took me in as I was this sort of young, excited person who said, I love data visualization, and I don't know how to write any JavaScript. And, thank God, they said, okay, fine, learn some JavaScript. And, sort of one of the nice things about this is I got to prance around to all the tech meetups in San Francisco and say, why, yes, I do both design and code. But sort of the benefit of working at Stamen is that it was sort of like the island of misfit toys, and that at least when I was there was no sort of curriculum for how to be a data visualizer. There was no degree, there was no certification. And so everyone was sort of coming at it from these different angles, and we were all just sort of thinking that it was this sort of interesting thing that was happening on the internet, and we wanted to be a part of it. And I think it's really wonderful to work in an environment where everyone's sort of coming at it from a different path. And a lot of people didn't even have a CS degree. I myself studied math and art history. And so I think that working at Stamen was one of those great things where I sort of saw that it's okay to be, have all these different interests, and that your work is sort of the culmination of them, and that it's okay to sort of keep trying new things even if you find yourself in a successful career. And if you're anything like me, those interests tend to develop into fascinations, and the fascinations tend to develop into projects. And then you see that you're working on all this, all these different projects, but they're all developed or they're all tied back to different pieces of yourself. And so I'd sort of say that, what I see as my success in life is sort of from a refusal to focus. It's just, this is something I've been told at several points throughout my life, that I've, sort of had my fun, but it's really time to focus, and it's, time to choose a path that you're going to be on, and I've, sort of brazenly said, no, I won't. I'm going to keep doing everything all the time. And I wanted to kind of show you this exercise that I do for myself, and it happens maybe about once a year when I feel like I'm getting a little unsure of what I want to do. And so I start by sort of writing down topics of interest, which in this particular one would be orange, and then I go to short-term interests, which are green, and then I go to long-term interests, which are blue. And then I sort of try to arrange them and figure out where everything goes. And this is sort of my map of everything that I want to be accomplishing. This particular one is from about 6 years ago, and you'll notice the scary blank space that I've called out, because that's where the career one was, and I had no idea what I was going to do 6 years ago. But for me, sort of the projects then are drawing the connections between these different interests. And when you find a way to combine them in such a way that turns into something cohesive that you can show other people, that's really kind of where the beauty comes out. And that's what I like to think of as happening with Meshu and Gifpop, is that there's this combination of rapid prototyping, of travel, of data visualization, of cartography, of animated GIFs, of supporting artists, all these different things that sort of get tied together into projects that I can share with other people. However, at this point in writing the talk, I realize that I am veering dangerously into sort of generalized feel-good advice. And I actually wrote this slide semi-seriously, and then sort of congratulated myself that I had come up with such a great kernel of wisdom that I could tell the attendees of XOXO, and you're all going to walk away feeling great, right? Because in no uncertain terms, I have told you that the formula for success is to pursue interests, build projects, profit. Update this for our emoticon lexicon. And if we follow down this sort of path, then we get into this dangerously Jobsian territory where I tell you that you should quit your job and do a startup and on some level, yeah, your job is holding you back. It's taking 40 plus hours of your life and turning it into somebody else's project, and yeah, you should quit it. And your stable income and job security are nothing, and you should be a freelancer, yeah. Woo, come join us, it's great. And I think that's something sort of interesting that this conference needs to straddle, is that we're all sort of celebrating independent workers and freelancers, and I would hate for us to, at the end of this, just to sort of pat ourselves on the back and say, what a coincidence that we're better than everyone. When it works to be a freelancer. It's amazing. You get to work on your own projects and pursue your own interests. And when it doesn't work, it really sucks. I got to have my first public failure this year. Quite exciting. I think actually so it's a conference that I was going to put on, and the title was For People Who Make and Sell Things Online. And I basically wanted to have a conference where other small business owners online could come and talk about kind of the brass tacks of owning a business. How it is to do manufacturing, packaging, shipping, all sort of the boring stuff that's really hard when you're starting a small business online. Perhaps this was so obvious to me that I don't know, I've got a bunch of pet theories of why it didn't work out. Did a Kickstarter failed, we move on. I was joking at some point that now I can write a Medium post about failure, and how I've learned from it, and now I'm this better person or something. But the truth of it is, it really sucks to talk about failure unless it's super far behind you. If you have some new great success that you can sort of say, well, I failed, but then look at this new thing. And I'm not that far from it. It's still sort of hard, and I think that sort of failing on the internet is a lot closer to crying in public, which unfortunately is something that I've also been experiencing lately for totally different reasons. But you're kind of out there and it's happening and you don't want it to happen, and everyone around you kind of wishes you weren't doing this right in public, but it's sort of what's going on, and it's hard. And I don't actually know what's worse, the sort of spirit crushing of failure, or the sort of persistent stress of never having your money kind of line up with the schedule that you wish it was on. So this is a screenshot from 2013. There was sort of a nice symmetry in my lack of income, so I took a screenshot. Yeah, fun fact, I didn't make any money until November last year. Which part of that was by choice, and I spent like the first 5 or 6 months traveling around, and it was great. But then I started working in earnest in July, and I was doing work for till the end of the year, and the checks didn't actually come in until November. I went into debt for the first time in my life last year, and thankfully it was a little bit of debt. It was a soft debt. My boyfriend at the time basically paid my rent for the month and let me pay him back the next month. But yeah, we put our apartment on Airbnb, and that's the first money that I made in 2013. Once the checks come in, it's great to deposit $35,000 into your checking account. Sometimes you feel like a human again. But this is sort of an accurate representation of 2013. When it's not going well, this is what freelancing feels like. It's just that everything's on fire and you're trying to make it through, but it's not quite there right yet. It's hard, and if any of you follow me on Twitter, you might have seen this tweet, which I posted on Tuesday night when I was flying out here, and frankly, this came about because I was looking at my bank account and realized that I have enough money to feed myself until the end of the month before I dip back into my savings. And before anyone gets worried, like I've got the work, it's lined up, it'll come in, it'll be fine, but it's just frustrating when you spend all this time trying to set yourself up and you say, I'm not gonna do that thing that happened last year and I'm gonna have plenty of money sitting around, and then you see that it's not quite working. And this is sort of how it feels sometimes, that you keep trying and you keep jumping right back into that shark's mouth. But in the end, this is the life that I chose, and this is entirely on me. And if I wanted to, I could go and find a job, and I could have stable income, and I wouldn't have a talk about complaining about my lack of income. And we take the time to focus on the things that are important to us. And you probably can't read most of this, but there is this one at the top that says travel 25% of the year. And this is my year so far. This is January through planned stuff in November. And it's kind of a lot, And some of you might be thinking, well, Rachel, I figured out how you can save some money. And, yes, valid point, but a lot of this is, this is facilitated by the fact that I have officially lived somewhere for only 4 months this year. All of my stuff has been in storage, and I've been living out of a suitcase since February. And so, some of this is honest-to-God travel and tourism, and that's totally awesome, and some of this is just hopping from friend couch to friend couch, and this becomes surprisingly easy when you just turn your rent money into plane tickets, and you too can travel a bunch. When your life has kind of no routine and no structure and no safety net, it becomes really easy to find the time to work on your 7 concurrent projects. So, in general, this is kind of where I feel like I am right now. It's a little bit rocky, but in general, it's kind of working, most of the time. We're going up. And this is sort of, what's important to me is to be able to explore those different interests of mine and to be able to spend my time kind of working on the things that are important to me and traveling around and, mostly making it work. I couldn't possibly stand up here and be giving you generalized advice of what to do with your life, so I'll just leave it at this. You should be your own fucking hero. Thank you.